Right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this May Masterclass for the Data Vault Innovators community. You might recognize me as the host of the Data Radio Show and Julien as the usual host that we would have for something like this, but we've switched things up a little bit this time around, and Julien is going to be the one who gets grilled. So I'm really sorry for the tough questions. No pressure. Also joined here by James Hartwright from Pragmaticians. One of the things that I found really interesting going through my archives that I've got here is the very first masterclass that I worked on in 2022 in October. And I thought to myself, when I first got this role to be able to make content for you guys, somebody told me these are going to be evergreen products because the technology doesn't change that much. The way that people approach problems don't change that much. But we've seen over the last sort of 12 months this massive increase in the use of generative AI across all sorts of fields. And I know it's something that's coming through really strongly in Data Vault. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to have a look at some of those questions we asked back in 2022 and see whether or not we'd still have the same kind of outcomes or if there's new tools out there to help people build their vaults and deal with the problems that they come across. And I thought I couldn't come across anybody better to answer these questions for me than you two, because you are absolutely brilliant at what you do. So thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, now I've puffed you full of hot air and told you you're brilliant. First really tough question for you. What are the options that are out there for data quality remediation?
Oh, data quality remediation. Well, it's interesting. There's a lot more data pipeline monitoring tools, or statistical quality control. Remember that, James?
Yeah.
We were talking
before
about that
data observability came out. Yep.
Correct. Yeah, and it's essentially the same thing. So it is a little bit in that machine learning sort of space, I guess. That you're creating a model that of what you expect out of a stream of data. Might be temperatures or or vibrations or revolutions per minute or whatever it is, and you're kind of understanding acceptable values, and so that's you can do anomaly detection and what you do with that answer, though, that's an interesting thing. James, I know you know lots more about this, so I'll kick it off. But you can take
I'm actually going to pick up on the third word Paul used: remediation. Data quality issues occur everywhere. Everybody's human. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody's short of time. So quality issues occur. When I first got into the data quality and data governance side, it was like, no, everything has to be 100% perfect. And then you very quickly realize that 100% perfection is impossible, unattainable. So therefore, just don't do it. So start picking on the things that are important. And we still have the data quality thing of critical data elements, things that are just key to your organization's proper running. But it does mean that some of the, like, hey, the marketing team or the maintenance team sort of get left out a little bit on those, but don't necessarily have the full set of people that can go, hey, there's data quality issue in this data over here, that attribute. So that data observability piece and machine learning over the top of it, that's a step up from maybe where we were 2 years ago to go, if I can train the machine learning model to go, here's a load of data. So you shouldn't expect these attributes to be updated or these correlate with these. If I've got address line 1 and 2, then I must have a suburb state postcode. Those sorts of things you can sort of train a machine learning on and do. And as Jules says, to surface up when it sees something a bit weird that's not been predefined. So that's the starter. And then the next is, if we're going into the Gen AI mode, is, well, if you can say to the generative AI, it's this sort of data, it's names and addresses of people who are buying products, or it's a bit of maintenance we're doing on an asset. So there's like a piece of work that the human's doing, and give it even more flavor, even more, information about what it's doing. It can use that level of intelligence to go, I sort of understand what should be going on here, and then apply even furthermore, almost to the SME orientation of that looks like a data quality error. And that's now occurring every day on this group. So I want to surface that up to the human to go, I think there's something here that you should look at. And that is definitely, as we're maturing more, becoming more and more possible.
So does that kind of remediation kick
Yeah,
in with things like prompt training, like to train the system through errors and issues that you've come across to work out what might need to be remedied?
The it will certainly help guide you. It's not the the remediation part. I said I was going to pick on it, but I didn't. Most of the stuff that we try and do in Data Vault World or anywhere else is go, well, of course I could try and fix it. I can do a business rule and try and do a fix based on what I think it should be. But always, 99% of the time, go back to the where it's captured. So make the UI better. Like if it's a how long did you spend on this work order? Don't even get them to key it. Go hit the button when you started, hit the button when you stopped, and it will automatically record it. So all of those things of moving it left to how the data is captured and why and where, you basically solve the problem for yourself. Is that data quality problem goes away.
James, I actually read a thing yesterday, and I'll tell you about my response to it as well, because it was presenting that they could use Gen AI to fix data issues that were wrong and generate data that was missing. And I have a bit of a problem with that. Like my answer was, are you going to trust something that's generative to go, well, no, that shouldn't be that value, it should be this value, or there's no data at all, let's put something in that looks right. That feels to me like it's stretching governance rules beyond beyond where we want them.
It's infill, intelligent infill. It's there is a better word for it, but it's been in the analytics space for the last 25 years, and it's on that bit of if I want to have an analytical model or now a machine learning model that's trying to get the nuances and there's missing data, it almost has to go put it to one side. And so if you've got 5 or 10% of your data that's got missing, but there's still potential nuggets of information in the rest, intelligent infill is actually a good thing because you're looking at a broader set. You still have to do it with care.
Sure.
And so, yes, like
it depends on what you're doing.
If you're doing it, so the first real instance I saw of it was IoT data. So sensor data coming through from things, and the little radio signals occasionally drop out, or I called and it I couldn't get any data. I'll try again in 5 minutes. So what it does is do an intelligent infill and basically just goes, hey, what did I get in the 5 minutes before? Let me just copy that and put that in there. And eventually I'll overwrite it. But all of those alarms that go off if IoT data is missing are the things that you don't want. So a little of intelligent infill, knowing that more accurate data is going to come through, is all right to do.
I feel like if the simulation of, and it is IoT and those sorts of things, and if you're dealing with a bell curve, awesome. If you're dealing with people's names and addresses, you can't guess that stuff. So it's, I think it really does depend on. Yeah, that's right. It does depend on what the data is and what the scenario. Yeah. But there's in the pre-Chat GPT era, when that question was first asked a year or two ago, Paul. Yeah, the answers were very different. There's been a lot of.
It's fantastic to see the rate that new tools are coming out now to help is. It's impressive, actually. It's a little scary, but very impressive.
Yeah, right. And I think the other part there is that just if I'm a data scientist who's been doing this for the last 3, 5, 10 years, it's one of those things is like, hey, this little toolkit in my this tool in my tool bag, I can use it and I can use it appropriately, and it's going to save me time. And it's all those sorts of things that I think, for me personally, that's where I've been doing those sorts of things. It's like, oh, I could do this and write a load of code, or I can just go, could you generate me some of this and do it what I feel is sensibly? And it does. And I go, okay, I'm happy.
It must be like a mathematician walking around with a calculator when they first came out.
No, slide rules. Come on, bring back slide rules.
Back in the day. Right, next question for you then. How can a data quality framework be applied to process data and help improve business process quality?
Yeah, look, I think there's a bit of a similarity to the previous bit. There is if we go back 5 years when we were doing data quality, Julian, maybe even 10 years, you get a business analyst to go and talk to a business person and go, like, where are the areas of data quality that you're interested in or that you think are important? The business analyst then types all that in. Then they go and sit with the developer and go, hey, developer, I need some data quality rules, data quality checks that are going to go in. And the person will go and key all that in and write some code. And then they'll generate a report. The business analyst will go and look at it and go, does that map back? And then they'll go to the business user and then go, hey, here is your report. The business user goes, oh my God, turn it off. But all of those steps we've already recently proved with Gen AI. As a semi-intelligent business user, I can go, I want you to alert me whenever any new asset comes in and it doesn't have an install date. The Gen AI knows, we told it what the underlying data structure it is. It knows what an alert means because we've told us what that is. And it takes the English text, converts it into something, generates the SQL or code or whatever, and then goes, I can lodge that in. And then within 5 minutes, it's starting to do those reports. And the business user, intelligent business user, can then go, yeah, that's about right. Or, oh, that's brought up some stuff that I didn't think was appropriate. Let me tune that. So we've massively reduced and massively enabled the ability for people to start putting their own data quality pieces. Now, what that's not doing necessarily, unless you've got a great framework like a Data Vault business rule, is getting that implemented into the organization and running it at the appropriate time. This needs to run every day, or this only needs to run where I've got an updated record or a brand new record. Those are the bits that we still must put into a good framework.
Yeah, I think whenever we've deployed a data quality framework, it's never been the volume of rules that was the goal. It was the quality of the rules. So it was really what business process are you trying to affect, and what is the one or two rules that really identify that there's an issue with, so. We've had rules that have saved people, like a single rule saved organizations millions of dollars. So that's what you're looking for. So we can generate rules, but we don't want everyone just generating rules just because we should check if there's nulls in that field, or but we never bother filling it out anyway. It's what's the point, right? So I think it still comes down to actually having people really sit down and think about what rules affect what processes and what would the downstream outcome be. And then once you understand that, you might be able to write one or two rules that actually improve your business rather than just improve your data quality.
Yeah. And I'll go back. The business user is probably the best person, or some manager or somebody is probably the best person to pick that. Reliability engineer is a great one. The asset custodian is another one. Definitely not the salesperson or the marketing person.
I wouldn't trust my baby.
No, and not the consultant. Yeah, but not the consultant either. We can't come in and tell you what rules you should apply. It needs to come from the business saying these are the things that are broken.
Yeah.
Are there any sort of tools out there for people who are just starting on building a data vault or starting on the journey of getting it sorted that might help them isolate what those business rules could be?
I mean, well, there's always been, well, not always, but for a long time, there's been profiling tools of varying degrees and those sorts of things that can, look at data sets and give you a snapshot of the structure and potential issues, nulls within various fields and all of those sorts of things. And so you can use that to build up what is the data, what are the problems, what can we do? There's actually a really nice new tool that actually got pre-released or released, I guess pre-released is the right word, this week, which is Flow BI. So Flow BI is a data vault modeling tool that's using AI to look at the source data sets and not just profile them and give you some statistics on the structure and what have you, but actually convert that into a data vault model, a target data vault model. So it'll go through all of the data sets that you want it to model and it'll give you all of the data vault attributes that are required to house that information. And so that's a big leap forward. Like, yeah, they're in pre-release, so it's it's a very new tool, and it's Michael Olszynski is the one of the team that's put that together. He clearly knows data vault. He knows machine learning. He's a data scientist by background. We've had a look at it already. We're doing some work with it. Our Iris tool is actually going to work with it to be able to convert those models into code for running on the target warehouse. So it's a good step forward. I think we'll see a lot more of that. I think they'll improve very quickly as well. Obviously, it needs a lot of horsepower behind it, to understand a lot about not just they're not just looking at the structure of a source system, but they're actually looking at all the data in all of the tables and understanding all of the relationships between all of that data, and then working out what that data model should be. It's what a data modeler would do over a significant period of time. They're trying to get a big computer to do that for us, and then I think that leads into then your model being able to adapt to change a lot quicker if that comes. So that's pretty impressive. It's a bit of a shift.
And yeah, I mean, that bit that I was just talking on the building data quality rules, I definitely think that the Gen AI side of creating business rules and generating code that is nicely atomically encapsulated is going to be one of the next things that we're going to see if they haven't already started appearing. It's within Data Vault, and if we take out the bit that Jules just said is really important of going, like, the time spent to try and get your first model sorted, or as new sources coming in, how does it interact? That's great because you're hopefully getting instant expertise. At the bare minimum, you're reducing the amount of time that it takes to work all that out. But yeah, that bit of, hey, I've got 3 different sources that are sort of cross interacting. I need a business rule because it's 3 different systems to present that data in a way. If there are things that we can do that help those get generated, then which I think we can with generative AI, then definitely in there. And then the only other one that I've been playing around with, and it not just in Data Vault, is test data generation. Anybody who's ever been given the role of tester will know it's just like thinking up all of the different scenarios that probably have a real life scenario to them, and then creating test data for it, and then running the test and having your expected outcome. The pieces that we can now do. So take a business rule and take that it's got human logic in there, and take the data and knowing all of the different attributes, and hey, I've got agenda which has 1, 2, 3, 6 entries in it, and generating appropriate test data with expected outcomes on it, and then just plugging that into your test process, like, saves time, money, irritation. It's still not quite there. There's still very definitely nuances, but some of the core pieces of just getting in and through are going to be, that's a massive saver for lots of people.
It's always easier. It's always easier when you're trying to improve something rather than start from scratch.
Julien.
So someone's sitting down having to write code, even for a business rule, starting from scratch. If you can use the Gen AI bit to, hey, give me a starting point for this. And I know our teams had to play with, can we get ChatGPT to create a data vault model for this? Then can it write all the code for this? And one of the questions there was, oh, well, if I had a source that had this other stuff, how would I integrate it? And the very first step it did was say, well, here's a table of the data you've described that I've just generated. Now let's look at how do we model that in and how do we write code for it. And it was very basic. We're talking really small, but I know the guys at Infovia in the US, their team has used ChatGPT to generate all the code for a reasonably sized data vault model. So it's possible, but you're basically shifting your skills to prompt engineering skills. And then, I guess my feeling about it right now is, why use generative stuff where you might get fluctuations and variations in the output when you can use template driven stuff that gives you exactly the same structure every time? That's a now statement. We might come back in 2 years' time and have a very different conversation about that. But for right now, if you want consistency and those sorts of things, traditional automation seems to be the way to go. But yeah, as James said, test data or starting points for business rules or all these other things. Why not let AI give you a starting point and then fix it rather than start from scratch?
That actually raises a really interesting sort of segue into my next question that I had, which was around whether or not the rules have changed for data observability. And if you're using something like a generative AI that can give you variations, does that change how the rules work for data observability and how it fits within building of Data Vault and working within the system?
You go first, James.
Yeah.
I suspect.
So not in the area, not for me, not in the areas that we've just talked about. So the thing of data observability and Gen AI and ML, it's tuning better. You can throw it at it; it's going to do a better job, but it's probably going to be more expensive than if you did a machine learning model or if you did some sets of rules. So there's a little bit of thing in there. It is going to produce a better result. The next piece there would be that actually I think it's going to be more important where we start looking at how important that is. So let it do the ranking process. Hey, this thing, suddenly we got 1 million records coming through with bad data in. I want to tell you about that now. Yeah, if we've had 50 records a day that are a bit bad, I'd sort of want to get it, but make it 10th or 20th in the list. So I think some of those in terms of helping it work out the prioritization and the risk and the rewards of making those changes. The bit in the data observability side, I mean, go
probably. Yeah, I think it probably hasn't changed. I mean, if from an observability point of view, you're probably looking at, is the volume has that changed significantly from yesterday to today? As the expected values, are they well outside of the expected range, or are they are they not? Has the structure of the data for some reason changed all of a sudden? Like those things will, so data observability rules like that have probably been hand coded into platforms for a long time. Now there's platforms that do data observability, and you can probably create a bigger, more complete model. You might use AI to give you some ideas around other ways to monitor it, but essentially what you're looking for is the data flowing through in the way I expect it, and the values within a reasonable range. Like, do I usually get a number between 1 and 10, and all of a sudden I've got a 10,000? Why does that exist? That that's more in your observability space. I don't think the rules specifically have changed. I think the tools are just getting better.
I've remembered what I was going to say in that data observability piece. We have this thing in satellite data. Satellite data comes in, here's 1,000 records, here it's 100,000 records. And then at some point we go, there is slowly changing data in here. There are 20 attributes that are pretty static, and these 2 attributes get touched 33 times a second. And what we have to do in our data vault process is make a decision at some point to go, those should be 2 satellites. Data observability applying in that way, and a bit of Gen AI on top to go, hey, developer, or hey, data manager, I think you should change this table to make it a different set of satellites. And here's the code ready for it. Those are the sort of things I think that as Jules said, like the Flow BI part of doing things, the data observability, anything in terms of the automation where we're almost to the untrained user hiding away some of that complexity that we have in Data Vault. I think that's actually the way it's going to go. Is look, you still need to know all of the bits and pieces and why and what it's doing. So go on the training, but where the tool's helping you and doing things for you, and you go, yeah, that's a brilliant idea. Deploy that. That should be where we're going, and will be where we're going.
It's like an expert assistant kind of
And it,
role.
like
Hey,
the Copilot word is a
Yeah.
perfect word in word. I know it's
Yeah,
Microsofty,
it is.
but Copilot is absolutely where we want to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
I agree.
Right. Last question. This one might actually be a bit more of a personal opinion than anything else. How would you describe the current role of data in a business, and how do current trends impact trust in data?
I've been writing something about this actually just this morning, so let me have a stab at it. Because I think we've been on this journey. Like 10 years ago was the big data era, and and now we look at those volumes and probably laugh. But there's the cloud adoption, there's mobility, there's digital transformation, there is the big data era, and then there's Gen AI. Like it's come and sat on top of what was already a highly complex thing for an organization to manage. They're trying to get maybe real-time analytics happening for various processes within their business, and so they're needing the data platform and the analytics tools to do all of that stuff for them. And everyone was okay. And then 12 months ago, like Gen AI dropped on everyone's lap, and everyone's like, without Gen AI, we're not going to be competitive. What do we do? Right. And at the same time, the cloud data platforms are getting more accessible and less expensive. And so smaller organizations are actually now facing the same requirement. They need to adapt and use analytics and Gen AI to compete in their markets. And if they don't, they're dinosaurs. And so I think everyone's feeling the pressure to deliver something, right? Everyone's got an AI-driven something at this point, right down to probably the local pizza shops, the Domino's or whatever will have a AI-driven something. If they don't already, it's coming next week. So I think that has put pressure on smaller organizations who had less sophisticated approaches to data management, needing to adopt enterprise level data management methodologies or processes without the team, without the technology stack, and so there's a scramble to these dark cloud platforms that have various tools and that have support, and there is now probably flowing just in time things like Flow BI and what we're trying to do with Iris as well to help bring that level, enterprise level approach to markets that maybe are a bit smaller organizations, a bit further down the chain that traditionally couldn't do it. So I think business leaders are probably struggling, knowing they have to do it, not knowing how much it's going to cost them, where are they going to find the budgets for it, how are they going to stay competitive. At the same time, every tech vendor's throwing AI into it and saying it's going to save your bacon. And it may all come together at the one time, and the tools will get easier to use because they've got more AI embedded in them and all of those sorts of things. But it is an interesting and very fluid environment right now.
Yeah. Agree with everything Jules has just said. There are two bits I've got around data and tools that we're putting on top of it. So the first is what's historically been called unstructured data. So all of the texts and images and videos. We've had tools for the last 5, 10, 15 years. We can apply natural language reasoning to data and process it through. Something like Gen AI has just made that way easier to do. To go, I think there might be something interesting in there. Let me go and see if I can see anything around ethics, and pull that out of all of the documents, or and do that a bit more naturally on request. So our data platforms need to cope with that better, and all of the understanding that I've got a bit of free text in here. Well, there might be personal and sensitive, etc. data in there. It's like, how do we deal with that? That's a problem I haven't resolved, but I know it's going to come. But we need to prepare ourselves for those sorts of things. There is still in there, though, in looking for, investigating, searching, and then going, is that useful for me ongoing? And so turning that question into something that you need to cement in definitely comes back to data vault orientation. I'm looking for any sentence where there is the word privacy or ethics and there's a negative sentiment in that text. I want to draw that through and alert it somewhere. Yeah. And, it's probably a bad example, but all those sorts of things of pulling things out and going, if we see any of these and they're trending upwards, we want to do something with it as a business user. And then the second part, anytime I hear generative AI, I hear risk and hallucinations and it making stuff up, which if you're going in and looking at data is like, no, we're bringing trust, robustness to the, we can't have the Gen AI making things up. So everything that I've been doing this year, might change next year, is we have data marts. Yeah. We've built data marts that are for certain roles, certain uses. So let's point generative AI to those data marts that we've already crafted. Give them a little bit more information about what's in those, and then go in the role of blah, 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 come and look in this data and draw out things based on my question. And look, still may make errors, but so could a human, but it's making it a bit more focused and going, this is the domain of data that you're looking at. And these are the questions, and this is the context of what you're doing. It's a little bit of prompt engineering, but it is very definitely going, don't go and look out there. And some people go, no, I want it to look out there, but I'm going, not yet, until we want to work out what it is. Come in and look at this data mart where we got the robustness and things, and the answers you get are more than likely going to be accurate based on your question.
It's a good point, James. Steve Rose in the Ignition team's written an article which will probably be a couple of weeks away from being released, so we'll make sure that this audience gets to see it. But it's literally about modern data platforms with Data Vault and how do they work with AI, and how does AI understand relationships, and how does Data Vault present relationships, and exactly on that same path is the Vault needs to be the place the AI goes for facts, not just leaning on its training and generating a serial number. Like, this is what a serial number looks like. That's great, but what's the actual serial number? Like that's, we need that sort of thing. So so that article will be out in a couple of weeks, but it's definitely it's kind of one of the key topics, I think, because we've got this ability to understand sentiment and analyze text and all of those sorts of things, but when we generate an answer, an organisation will want that answer to be correct, not just something that sounds.
I think
right.
that depends on the organisation, because there are some governments out there who probably wouldn't mind if it was sounding right rather than being right.
Well, yeah. Well, there was the Air Canada example where their AI generated a policy around funeral flights, and it sounded right, but it was just completely wrong. So. And they tried to use the argument that the individual should have looked at the actual policy on the website. But if they're interacting with the chatbot on the website and it says this is the policy and it's framed up to look like a policy, well then you've now got an AI setting your company policies for you, because as far as the legal system in Canada goes, anyway, they said
it's an employee, it's your business. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, you can't. It's not a separate legal entity. You built it. So, So there's a long way to go for all of this. I think we're in the wild west of Gen AI at the moment, and things are moving really fast. But it's almost like when we went from big, heavy duty BI platforms to data visualization tools. It was a big shift. Everyone all of a sudden could create enterprise-looking reports off any data set they liked, and then governance and robustness sort of flowed into those processes. So that's sort of, I think, where we're at now as well.
So I think one of the key takeaways I've got from this conversation, and it's a message I've heard many times over the last couple of years, data quality is going to be the key to success, no matter whether or not you're using something like a generative AI or you're doing something manually and you want your systems to work in the end. The quality of the data that gets inputted is what's the most important part of the whole process. Would that be a fair summation?
Well, yeah, I think Yeah, not just quality though. I think the good thing for this audience, who are generally almost, if not 100%
Mhm.
in favour of Data Vault, let's say 95% in favour of Data. Data Vault brings more than just quality. It brings a way to manage your data, a structure to use, a set of rules or standards to follow. The ability for templates, for automation and all those other things, so that you can really trust. Because quality is one aspect of trust, but there's more to it as well. But I think yes, it's in that frame. You agree, James?
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. And knowing your quality is another thing. So and telling the generative AI, there's some data over here, I'd like some insights on it, but just know that it's a bit dodgy. And that's a perfectly acceptable way to go.
Yeah. Yeah,
Brilliant.
absolutely.
Well, I'm all out of questions. Thank you very much, guys, for joining me and giving me a bit of a time trip back in the past and having a look over what we've done beforehand. It's been highly informative.
We should do this again in 2 years.
Absolutely. I am totally down for
Yeah.
that. For everybody out there watching, don't forget you can comment on this here on the YouTube page or wherever it is that you've downloaded the podcast version from. And don't forget to jump over to the Data Vault Innovators community and check that out and join the conversation there. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe this video. Tell everybody about it. We'll cheat the Google algorithm and make it think that we're super, super popular and everybody should be using Data Vault. Until next time, guys, thank you very much. And I hope you have a fantastic day.
Cool. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul.